Thanks for joining me. We're going to talk about the concept of personality in sport within this particular recording, but we really are just going to scratch the very surface of the huge tranche of research that's been done related to personality and personality profile in sport. And I can't encourage you enough. If you find intrigue and interest in this particular topic, then you need to do a bit more research, because we really are just going to literally scratch that surface of it, because it's a fascinating subject. We're going to address two main personality types, or perceived personality types. You have to make your own mind up whether you believe these are actual phenomena or some kind of generalized perspective of personality. But we're going to look at the concept of the introvert and the extrovert, and we're going to broadly describe and give the characteristics, and maybe try and make an interpretation of how they might influence sporting participation. So let's address this introvert. In general terms, with an introvert, we are suggesting that they might be more of the shy, the quiet, the thoughtful kind of personality. Now, you might be able to think of people in your life that could be described like this. It may be you yourself could be described like this. Now, I want to be clear here. Neither of these personality types is better. I mean, you might have preferences to one or the other, but there's no better, worse. There's none of this. It's just maybe the descriptions of the generalized ways that people behave. So in general, we might describe an introverted characteristic as someone who is a little bit shy, more aloof, quiet, thoughtful. Maybe they spend more time alone, more time reflecting. And I certainly don't think that's a criticism. We can certainly say that reflecting and spending time thinking is a really positive aspect of behaviour. We would sort of describe people in this way. And in general terms, we might expect an individual to be attracted more to individual sports. Or I should say an introvert might be more attracted to individual sports, which is why I place an image of a skater here. Now, this happens to be of a skater falling, and I actually chose that deliberately because there's a beautiful piece of research recently which suggested that the ice skaters that reach the highest levels of performance, elite levels, international Olympic levels of performance, are the ones that fall over most in training. And I wanted to leave you with that thought. I thought it was very interesting from a sports science learning sort of perspective. Kind of an interesting concept. But we do argue that introverts might be more likely to be drawn towards individual sports. We might even say that individual sports bring out introversion in people because they are individual. Whether the sport makes the personality or the personality makes the sport is an interesting question. But the other thing we might say is that introverts, and we've looked at arousal obviously in recent tutorials, they might be attracted to sports where the requirements for arousal is lower, so low arousal sports. And when we're talking about low arousal sports, we're talking about fine skills, those that need less kind of hype and firing up of the arousal levels. And therefore, these low arousal sports, ice skating could be another example of that, of course. So could anything involving accuracy and precision, might be more relevant to an introvert type personality in general. The number of exceptions to these rules are absolutely huge, I'm sure you realise. Then what do we mean by an extrovert? Well, an extrovert is someone that really appreciates large quantities of interaction with others. Okay, so we might sort of say that they're very sociable type character, so they like to be in the presence and engaging with other people. Now, this term's an interesting one. We might say they are aroused by others. Don't get too excited. What we mean by that is that others actually are able to stimulate the kind of the best performance in an extrovert because they perform better in front of audiences. They perform better around others in social context. So, of course, because of that, what we might say, therefore, and put it down here a little bit, is we might expect that an extrovert is going to be more attracted or indeed made by team sports, which is why I put this example of a team sport in field hockey as a possible consideration. Other things that we might expect, extroverts can be talkative. They can be talkative. We can also say that they're often the most enthusiastic. They'll throw themselves into many challenges and maybe won't always necessarily think it through. But the other point which is really worth considering is that they get bored easily. Okay, so an extrovert could find certain more quiet introverted sort of experiences as quite passive and quite tedious. So therefore, that can have a negative influence potentially. So on that basis, we've said this point about team sports. We also need to say that extroverts seem to perform better when the concentration requirement is lower. concentration requirement is low. Okay, so we might expect that to be the case. And finally, as I said before, introverts might be more attracted to fine skills. Well, of course, extroverts might be more attracted to gross skills. Now, I repeat again, these are huge generalizations. It doesn't apply to all people, and it may well not apply to you. But in general, these are our overarching descriptions of extroverts and introverts. And it might be an interesting process for you guys to now sort of start to interpret those people around you. You interpret yourself. Do you fit neatly into these sort of categorizations, or do you obliterate them as being completely different because you're a huge combination of both? And we might also say, of course, the situation might bring out the different approach in different people. Is it the case that introverts will often convert to becoming extroverts as they cross the white line in the sports context, for example? It's a very interesting concept, that crossing the white line. Do we sort of move into a different persona? All right, that's all from me as I write that out at the end. Crossing the white line, does it change us? Thanks for listening and good luck.